Hello, welcome to The Exhausted Programmer. My name is Alexander, and today we're going to look at a bunch of small little programs to make it look like you've learned something this year. A lot of problems that affect new programmers has to do with their image. It manifests itself in many ways, such as at work with the imposter syndrome, where you start talking about the big O notation of printing a file while praying that no one asks you if your JavaScript stack is client-side or server-side rendering. At home, it's slightly different, sometimes feels like the inverse, where in order to explain to people what you do, you have to then explain to them a lot of other things, usually involving math, and that causes people's eyes to glaze over. Wouldn't it be nice if you could just throw something up on your screen that is clearly computery, but also will not bring up any follow-up questions? Well, that's what we're going to be looking at today. 9 different programs that look kind of neat, but don't really do anything in order to really capture that image. It is worth pointing out at the very beginning that every one of these programs has a man page, although not every one of these programs has a useful man page. If you want to know what you can do with each one of these, I would suggest just doing a little bit more research, starting with the man page or seeing if there's an help flag, as we'll see later in this video. The first thing to do is to get out of the way the most common and often used pipeline for these little flavor programs that don't really add to productivity, but do make things seem a little bit more fun. And that is the Fortune cowsay lolcat pipeline. Fortune is a program that pulls in quotes in a database and puts them on the screen. Here we have one from Shakespeare in The Tempest. Then it gets piped into a program called cowsay, which adds this little text bubble and an image of a cow so that it looks like the cow says whatever text you piped in. The final part of this is a lolcat, which is what makes it look very rainbowy. Again, each one of these programs has a man page and documentation. Not that we're going to look at them here, but if we were to look at cowsay, we would see that if we gave it the -L flag, it would tell us all the different options we could use to replace this cow. We could write a script that would test each one of these out for us, as we did in a previous video, but the point of this video is to get through this quickly. So I'll just pick one, and we'll see that if we just put it into the proper place, that we can change the cow to a snowman, and of course Fortune pulled us a different quote. The next program to look at is used as a way of playing a prank on people on the same server. People are all the time trying to list a directory with ls, and sometimes they type it wrong. Instead of getting an error saying that SL isn't a real program, instead, you can install this program that I'm calling Steam Locomotive. With SL, you get a Steam Locomotive, and you cannot get out of this with Control-C. If you aren't aware of how interrupts work, they are managed by the program themselves, and you can turn off certain interrupts from working. Not to be exhaustive on this program, but there are 4 flags that come up. The first one to point out is the -E flag. With this, we no longer have to wait for the whole train to get through. We can also give it a capital F for flying. This will cause the train to start low and slowly rise up. And then we can show the last 2. The A is for accident and L is for little. We'll have a little train with people saying help as if they were in some sort of accident. So you can see that these can all work together. We could have made this flying as well. Now at this point, I was planning on showing that not all these programs work nicely together. A long time ago, I'd pipe in SL into lolcat and get just a bunch of rainbow and colorful text just all over the screen, but nothing that looked like a train. But apparently in this version of Ubuntu, now you get a rainbow train. The next thing to look at is one called CMatrix, which makes it look like the Matrix screen from the movies. This too has flags, of which I'm only going to show off 2, and encourage you to read the man pages for more. But with the A and B flags, we can make the lines come down asynchronously, which is what the A is for, which is they're not all at the same speed as they were the first time. And the B makes some of these characters bold, which adds a little bit more variety. Again, if you look at the documentation, you can also see that you can change the colors at this point. While it is the winter holiday season, a thing you might want to have on your screen is a fire, and a very classic one is AA fire, which if we run, will not work. Here is an example of one having a bad man page because there's really nothing there, but we can instead get more information from the --help flag. There is a lot to take into here, but the thing that I would point out is the driver's flag. Up here we have some options, and when we change that to slang, we get a fire that actually works. So if you run AA fire and it doesn't work for you, probably start with the driver. Of course, people see this and they improve on it, and next we have Instead of AA fire, caca fire, which yes, is supposed to sound like that. But in this case, it has color. Again, there are options that you can get from this, but you get the idea. By the way, for both of those fire programs, they serve as sort of demos for graphical things you can do in a bash Windows. There's other demos also involved in the same packages worth exploring. But on to our next one. In a previous video, I talked about updating Ubuntu because the version of Git was out of place, but obviously I can get Git running on a different computer. The main reason why I wanted to update my system was because somewhere between the 20.04 version of Ubuntu and the 24.04 version of Ubuntu, in the repository has been added CBonsai. What CBonsai does is gives you a randomly generated tree. The tree itself is generated procedurally based on some variables given to it. One is the lifetime of the tree. How old is the tree? If we set it to 50, we'll get a bigger tree than what we had before. Instead, if we want this to look a little bit nicer, having it animated, we can give it a small L flag, and we'll see that it grows into this tree. But here, the capital L and 50 might be a bit of a problem because the bigger the tree, the slower it'll take to grow because it'll take more time to grow it. So instead, we can change the time in which it updates with the small t flag. And I think the default is 0.03, so this is 1/3 the time. That is to say 3 times as fast. And we'll see that we have a tree that grows much faster. So we'll have a full tree sooner. And there is our complete tree. And the final thing I want to look at for this video is one more tree, but one not found in the repository. I actually had to do some digging because this script shows up in a lot of articles, but I don't see it being attributed in all those articles. And wherever I got this from years ago, either I didn't copy it down or it wasn't provided where it came from. So best I can find is a GitHub repository, which I'll link in the description. But here it is. It's just tree. Gives us a nice Christmas tree plus a message that gives us the new year every year because it's not hard-coded in, but pulled up using date, another program that we've used multiple times this year. Hopefully from this video, you picked up at least one new program that you can take and share with others, whether it's with your family so it looks like you know what you're doing, or with your coworkers to distract them from the fact that you don't know what you're doing. If you have any other questions about these programs or anything else covered in this video, please feel free to drop a comment below. And if you like the video, like and subscribe, and thanks for watching.